I'm very interested in this freight ride you had across Canada. Could you tell me something about the cops? They call them the bulls or something. They had a name for them.
That's right.
What was it?
They call them the railroad bulls, that was my only encounter with the railroad police. The next year, I again rode the CPR through Red Deer, and I landed in Red Deer early in the morning on the tender of the flyer. That was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was warned that the local police, the Red Deer police, were watching the trains coming in and to make sure I wasn't seen. So as soon as the train stopped rolling, I cut across the railroad yards and through the freight cars in between freight trains and out to the highway, and then I walked in down the highway. And it's hard to see local police wasn't standing there waiting for me when I come along the highway, wanted to know what I was doing. I said, well, I'm coming into town and want to get some breakfast. And wanted to know where I was from, and I told them, and what was I going to do? And I said, I'm going to go out looking for work. I worked there last summer in the farm. So he said, you'll have to come with me. And I said, no, I want to get breakfast. Well, he said, the restaurants don't open until 7 o'clock, so you'll have to come and sit with me. So I had to go and sit in the police station until 7 o'clock. Come 7 o'clock, he says, okay, away you go. And I went and had breakfast. And I walked out into the country, and I hired out with another farmer that same day. So I never had much trouble finding work, but I always had to go looking for it.
That's very interesting. Now, were there any girls that rode the freight?
I know just one case when that same year when farm work was all finished. It was getting on fairly late in fall, and there was snow on the ground, and it was really freezing temperatures. And I rode the freight to Calgary, and there were about 10 of us fellows in the boxcar. Most of the time we're stomping around trying to keep warm, and the boys were telling me that there had been a girl in there too, and she got so cold that the train crew felt sorry for her, and they took her up in the cab of the locomotive to get her warm. And I did see her get off the locomotive when we got into Calgary. So I thought it was pretty decent of the train crew to help her out like that.
That's the only incident of a girl. I remember as a young woman myself seeing these freight cars come into our hometown, and there'd be rows and rows of unemployed fellows out of work sitting on top of these box cars. I often wondered how they got through tunnels and things like without getting hurt. They always look so cold up there anyway.
I never rode on top of the freight. I always managed to get into a boxcar. And I never rode what they called riding the rods, because that was hanging on to the support rods underneath the boxcars, which was very dangerous. You had to stay awake all the time. The thing was to get into a boxcar and close the door to within a half an inch, put a piece of wood or something in between so it wouldn't lock on you, and then you couldn't get out. But that way you were out of the wind, and the police couldn't see you. They didn't worry too much as long as they couldn't see you. Nobody else could. But if you were sitting on top, it was their job to kick you off.
Now, Mr. X, was there anything particular interesting, some incident that you could recall that would be of interest to the listeners?
Well, that trip, the second year, the trip I took into Calgary, I had my brother with me, younger brother, and we were told to get off the. We were riding the tender, by the way. That's the on top of the water tank. There's a big toolbox, and it's got a metal door on it, and you get inside there, and it's very filthy and dirty with coal dust and cinders, but you're out of sight and warm. Anyway, my brother and I were in this toolbox, and we get out from the outskirts of Calgary, and the train was still going when he was going to jump off first. And I had told him to wait a little bit, but he started to go down, and he started to jump off, and anyway, his feet swung in underneath, and I had to grab him and pull him back up, otherwise I guess the wheels would have cut his feet off. So that was one incident that wasn't too pleasant.
I'll say now, could have been killed. Now, could you tell me just how the depression affected you? Did all that dust and when going to Saskatchewan have any effect on you? Did it make you feel sort of just like the word depressed or pessimistic about life in general? Because after all, it was a heartbreak struggle to keep going on those wages for everybody.
No, you see, I'd never actually known real prosperity from the time that I finished high school. It was into the Depression, and I had never had real good, well-paying jobs. So it was just a matter of living from day to day and making sure that you could get the 3 square meals a day. So it was a matter of hanging on. Nobody seems to know when it would end. And it didn't really end even in 40 when I joined up. The first month I was in the Air Force, they didn't even have money to pay the servicemen. We had to wait for our pay.
Yes, I've heard that from various people. Quite a while before you got your first check then, as a serviceman.
That's right. We were manning crew, Stony Brook. And you'd get a 48-hour pass, and you had no place to go because you didn't have any money.
Were you married then?
That's right. My wife was back home waiting for her family, or not a family allowance, but the serviceman's dependence allowance, and it wasn't coming through either.
Would you remember how much she got as a dependent?
No, I don't remember, no. I couldn't say offhand. It wasn't that much anyway. It wouldn't go very far today.
Well, one more question, Mr. X. Do you ever see any of the reminders of the Depression around in Canada? Anything that, as you travel around now, would you see anything that could bring back memories of those days during the 30s?
Yes, every time I go through, say, southern Saskatchewan, when you go through those towns with 5, 6 elevators in them, and they're all working again, it reminds me of the one trip I hitchhiked through that part, and there was 5 elevators in this town, and a bunch of buildings, and there wasn't a living soul in it. The town was completely deserted. The Depression had just cleaned it out.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. X. You've been most patient, and I'm sure you're rather tired now. So thank you again.